Hey everybody, it's Nathaniel. I'm here to talk about my new. I'm here to review a book that I finished reading, The Antichrist by Friedrich Nietzsche. So let's go to our first point that I have here. Nietzsche says that which a theologian considers true must of necessity be false. This furnishes almost the criterion of truth. So what he means by that is that the doctrine of Christianity is meant to deceive. So you can almost say that the things that Christianity says the opposite are proofs of the opposite being true. Now, you can't really say that because not all the things that Christianity says are tied to the fundamental doctrine of it, but still, that's why he said it's almost the case that you can say that. Now, he compares Christianity to Buddhism. And he says that Buddhism came from the upper classes, the higher classes, like, how England has it, the caste system in India, the upper castes, the noble castes and the learned castes, while Christianity came from the dregs of society. Now, this is a big, I thought this was more worth mentioning because this is a big component of all of his work, that he says the dregs of society are wrong and bad, and they should know their place, and that noble people are good. And I don't know if I really agree with that, so that's something that I disagree with Nietzsche on. Later, he says, and this is a quote, he says, "With every extension of Christianity over ever larger and ruder masses who were ever less able to grasp its first principles, the need of vulgarizing and barbarizing it increased proportionately. It absorbed the teachings and rites of all the subterranean cults of the Imperium Romanum, the Roman Empire, as well as the nonsense of every kind of morbid reasoning." So, yeah, what he's saying here is that Christianity had to appease the barbaric desires of much of Europe in order to spread through Europe, which I agree with. He then says that the church sprang out of this this adaptation to the barbarism of Europe. And I also agree with that. I think that the Middle Ages was a barbaric, vile, and violent time, and that it makes sense that it came very interestingly from the old European cultures, a mix of the old European cultures and Christianity. And it's interesting, it's fascinating actually, because it came from its its old European culture in the Middle Ages came from old European culture, but not in a natural, progressive way. It 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 fundamentally came from Christianity, but it was Christianity was mixed up with some elements of the old culture by basically accident. So it 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 well, not by accident. It had to mix up with it to get spread, but there's no like they don't there's no like affinity with the old culture, but there is the fact that medieval Christianity resulted from the old culture. Now, this is pretty interesting. He says, and this is a quote: he says, "Towards the past, like all knights of knowledge, I am profoundly tolerant. That is to say, I exercise a sort of generous self-control. With gloomy caution I pass through whole millennia of this madhouse world, and whether it be called Christianity, Christian faith, or Christian church, I take care not to hold mankind responsible for its mental disorders. But my feeling suddenly changes and vents itself the moment I enter the modern age. Our age. Our age knows. That which formerly was morbid is now positively indecent. It is indecent nowadays to be a Christian. And it is here that my loathing begins." Now, what he means by that is that you can't have a species, even an intelligent species like humans, and expect it to be completely ethical and moral. Because what species are designed by nature to do is to survive and reproduce, not to be moral with one another. So that development would be good for the species, but it would, like, as a whole, but it wouldn't be like a fundamental biological part of the species. So when he says when he says something along the lines of "I forgive mankind for its mental illnesses," he means that he forgives. He doesn't care about the fact that mankind took a turn towards morbidity and evil and barbarism and violence, because it was a 50-50 chance that they would go either way, because there's nothing about nature, about human nature, about biological nature that says that humanity should be otherwise. So that's not to say that there's something about biological nature that says humanity should be violent, but it could go either way. So he's saying that he forgives these happenstance mental illnesses of humanity. Now, but he doesn't forgive the modern man for still sticking to Christianity, because the modern man knows about science, about philosophy, about all these rational things, and he thinks that is pernicious and malevolent of the modern man and lowly of the modern man to stick to Christianity. So yeah. he later on goes to say that the Genesis story of the Bible, that the apple of Eden made man made science accessible to man, and he says that God's enemy, the theologian's enemy, the priest's enemy is science, and I kind of agree with that because science. He said science makes man equal to God, and that's not. And I think that's not necessarily because he can find out the truth about God, but because he can be independent, and he can live without God, and find his own worth without God, and that's a threat to the theologian and the priest. So yeah, that's basically all I've wanted to talk about the Antichrist, about in the Antichrist today. Um, I hope you enjoyed my book review. See you next time.